What it do? Welcome to the week 4 of the Three Dudes Fantasy Football Show. You've read the articles. You're crunching the rankings. And what we're going to do is have some fun and just look at some big picture stuff and try to dive into some topics that will get you thinking ahead of week 4. I'm JJ Buck. That's Steven Masterson. Aaron Hernandez, busy, not with us, but he's here in spirit tonight on the Three Dudes Fantasy Football Show. And as we do when we record on Friday nights, it is a Friday. It is TNF takeaway time. We go right into what we saw last night. Dallas 20, the New York Giants 15. And I'm going to start with the dude that has to be rostered moving forward, the PPR scam. That is Wendell Robinson. Add him and play him. We're talking about a guy that is giving you a solid floor in PPR leagues. He hasn't had less than 9.8 points in any game this season. And the game that had 9.8 points, he only had 2 for 18, but he got a red zone target and scored a touchdown. This passing game is condensed between two players. And Steve, you talk about it all the time. I'll look for the top two guys, and it's easy. Malik Neighbors, who's going to the moon this season, the rookie, has a concussion, but that opens up potentially more targets for Robinson, that a guy that just Daniel Jones is always looking to, and their scheme in place for him as well.
I mean, and Daniel Jones seems to only be getting through 2 progressions before that offensive line was giving up pressure. And it's clearly Neighbors, then Robinson. So, you know what? If you have to take the second guy on a team that only gets through two reads, might as well take it, right? He's still dominating target share. I mean, it really is just those two. It's almost Dolphin-esque is what I think of. Is it's definitely 1A and then 1B, and there's nothing else. So if he's available in your league, he needs to be rostered. JJ, I saw what you posted on Twitter. I 100% agree with you there. Like he is the PPR scam as you labeled it. He's a cheat code at this point. Like you're going to get probably 7 catches and 60 yards. That's 13 points. You
Like
take that
last
to the
night,
bank.
it was 11 for 71. Like he's not
Right.
giving you the explosive plays, but if I'm getting 11 catches in a game with 50
Yeah.
yards plus, like that is 18.1 fantasy points last night. This dude
Well,
could be as a top 20 receiver this week.
I mean, he could get you 11 catches and 20 yards. You'd still be happy. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. I 100% agree. I saw it on Twitter. I agreed with you 100%. That is, and it's just one of those names that we're not talking enough about, right? He's kind of flying under the radar, but he's produced more points than a lot of our big name receivers of the last 2 weeks. So
Yeah, and with Malik Neighbors, what he's doing, coming off a season that we saw Puka Nacua set records, and the fact we have another first-year wide receiver on that trajectory, they're living up to the hype. And we talked about it so much going on the season. We liked all these rookie wide receivers, but Neighbors is doing even better than I think people expected because it's Daniel Jones, it's the Giants. You limit your expectations, but he was phenomenal. And before he got hurt, he put up 23 fantasy points. It was good to see. He was walking in a locker room after the game. He posted on social media that he's doing okay. That was one of those concussions where you freeze for a second. You saw when he hit the ground, and it's always worrisome. He gets a couple extra days before they get back on the field, but whether with or without Malik Neighbors, Robinson is here to stay. You look at the rest of the Giants. It was a disappointing night for Devin Singletary, and I think he's a guy that remains in flex territory. Guy to have on your roster because he's going to get playing time, but it was really disappointing against the Dallas defense that was giving up over 185 yards per game, and Dallas stuffed the Giants. We're talking they held New York to 26 rushing yards overall, and Singletary unfortunately wasn't part of the passing game. That's because you got so much Robinson and Neighbors, and he's a guy that's definitely a hold for me, or package him to get another running back. Put him with someone. As I think you look at Singletary's game log, his touches, he's going to get about 14 to 18 guaranteed. He's by far the RB1 in the Giants. So he's fine to have on your roster. I had to play him as an RB2 this week because I chose him over J.K. Dobbins. I just didn't like Dobbins' matchup against the Chiefs with all the injuries on the Chargers. But that's my mindset of decent depth, but potentially someone to think about putting as a package to get better at the running back position.
well, I think we're disappointed in his game stats at the end of the day, but if you get a running back who's getting like he went 14 for 24, it's terrible. But he also had 14 carries, and that is just hard to ignore. So I'm okay with keeping him on my roster, and I'm actually okay with playing him. I would have told you to play him this week anyways. It's bad games happen, and you can't expect him to have good games all the time. But it's not like he had 14 carries and then they took him out and try to get the running game going with someone else. He's clearly their 1A back, and the offense, even though they're not
6
great,
quarters without a touchdown. So that
yeah, even though they're
spoils
not
for
great,
his value
he's
right now.
getting the looks, right? So I don't know. I kind of believe in Brian Daboll a little bit. That offense that he puts together, he creates fantasy stars, and I like I like Singletary, and I don't disagree with you. You might be able to package him and get something else, but I don't think I'm. If I'm getting Singletary, I don't think I'm that disappointed. I don't feel like it's a
That's why
huge
I think
step
there's,
down.
like you're saying, there's value both ways. Like he's someone that you're comfortable with him on your roster because you know he's going to get touches. You're not guessing about that. But I think more of these games could be coming because the Giants are just struggling to open things up, and that seat is heating up for Brian Daboll because we look at him and go, "Oh man, he came in that first year with Daniel Jones and the Giants won a playoff game, and he has Malik Neighbors. He's opening things up with Robinson, and they haven't scored a touchdown in the last 6 quarters. I mean, you saw them you lose that game to the Commanders, the decision not to bring up a kicker when, yeah, your kicker was cleared, but he was hurt, and then he got a different injury in the game. But everything with the Giants, there's 3 playable options on that offense, and we'll, of course, keep an eye out on Malik Neighbors and his status moving forward. But when we get to the Dallas Cowboys, it's Rico Dowdle. He has slid ahead of Zeke Elliott. I think Zeke is definitely droppable if you need to make some roster moves. If there's a guy you want to grab on the waiver wire, maybe going in this weekend, like a Rashawn Johnson or someone like that with a little bit more upside, that's a dude that you can move to make space. He had 11 carries, 46 yards, converted a reception for a 15-yard touchdown, and someone's going to have to run the ball. And if it's Rico Dowdle, he's one of those guys that I think was a hold for a lot of people, and he almost moves into Devin Singletary territory if he starts to outtouch Zeke in this offense.
And he probably is a player that did get dropped in a lot of your 10-team leagues, so he's a good kind of pickup if you have the space. I'd pick him up anyways. I really think he has a chance on a good offense with a team that we project to score a lot of points, and somebody's got to run the ball. I agree with you, JJ. So,
Well, they
um,
need to find some playmakers.
yeah, they do. It can't just be CD. Yeah, Jake Ferguson's out there, but it's literally if CD Lamb's not scoring, then we're not moving the ball, and that's just not a recipe for success. So they'll figure it out. I do believe that. They've got to figure out who it is, and that's why we're here, right? So I think Rico Dowdle is the play. Uh, and yeah, I agree. Drop Zeke. I think even if Rico Dowdle gets hurt, he's not explosive. He doesn't look like
You'd think it
it's
maybe get some tough yards, some touchdowns out of it, and just those opportunities haven't been there in this Cowboys offense. They still only scored 20 points last night, and it feels a little bit disappointing too if you played Dak Prescott. When you look at it, he was efficient, and they won a football game. But from a fan's perspective, 221, 2 tutties, and you come out with 16 points. Could be worse at the quarterback position, which we'll talk about here shortly. But Jake Ferguson has quickly gone right back into that number 2 role. And of the tight ends we talked about, and I know a lot of people looked at Jake Ferguson and said, "Oh man, yeah, he can build off last year." When you look at immediately coming back from that MCL injury that he had, he goes 6 for 95 last week, 7 for 49 this week, 11 targets, 7 targets. He has rocketed up the tight end charts in a year that we're right back to figuring out what the heck we got to do at tight end.
Yeah, and Jake Ferguson is just one of those guys that he's not. It's just not as fun to watch him play as some of those other guys we get to watch. Jake Ferguson is definitely Jason Witten from our era, right? He's 7 for 49. That's 7 yards a catch. He's like, hey, I need you to get 7 yards. I'll get you 7 yards. But if you need me to get 15, I'll get you 7 yards. So
That
it's
6
not.
for 95 was pretty good.
Yeah, those games, but those games are always going to happen, right? Like Jason Witten used to have those games too. He's consistent, and that's kind of what you want out of your tight end. If you're getting
That's
10
what we
points out of your
need
tight
right
end
now.
right now, yeah. I mean,
And
I
he's
would
he's
take
locked
10.
in as the number 2 target. And they've tried, Tolbert, Cooks is going to be hit or miss. He's going to score a touchdown like every 3 or 4 weeks. That's about it. But locked in, like Dak is looking for CD and then Jake. And it goes right back into our top 2 targets.
Yeah, and Cooks will really only have big games now if CD has mediocre games for CD Lamb, right? Like CD Lamb, a mediocre game might still
Like
be
a
12 to
defense
15
has
points.
all their attention.
Yeah,
CD Lamb's
but
out.
then it'll be a Cooks and Ferguson day. But other than that, like it's we don't get paid to figure out what the defenses are going to run against him. So it'll be hard to ever start Cooks.
It will be. So Thursday night football takeaways: Dallas 20, the New York Giants 15. So we both made some trades last week, and it is trade season. And I want to remind you, trades are fun. It is fantasy football after all. I know we invested a lot of time in it. We're sitting here talking about it. Thank you for watching us in the Three Dudes Fantasy Football Show. But how do you handle being on the right side and the wrong side of the trade? Because we both have those stories this week. Steve was on the right side. He swapped Mark Andrews for Dalton Kincaid. And Kincaid scores a touchdown, has a solid game. The Bills go absolutely nuclear over the Jaguars. Mark Andrews, who you traded away,
Put up 0.
0, dude.
Yeah.
Like four targets. Like what are we doing there? Then, so you're feeling good. I, for whatever reason, thought Jake Ferguson wasn't going to come back as fast as he did. I traded Derrick Henry for Brock Bowers. Watch Bowers go out there, 7.9 points, but then watch Derrick Henry absolutely eviscerate the Dallas Cowboys and drop 31 points. And Derrick Henry is going to score all the touchdowns in the world. And so you have those emotions. I want to start with handling that, like not overreacting in the moment. You decided to make a move, you did it. But I was sitting there Sunday night immediately thinking, how do I trade away Brock Bowers? Like as I just got him and then watch
Right.
Derrick Henry go nuclear. So I want to kind of just talk through, don't be scared of trades. Trades are fun. It's fantasy football after all. But then having those moments of where it's only 1 week, so you can't say it was bad or not. Like I know for sure Derrick Henry's going to outscore Brock Bowers the rest of the way, but this is a playable piece, potentially a movable piece in the tight end market, but not overreacting to the moment in 1 week.
So I 3 things before we really get down this hole. The first and biggest thing to me is I hate when people think somebody won or lost a trade. A trade should be benefiting both teams. So if you ever feel like, oh, I won and I won this trade and I screwed my friend over, at the end of the day, all you're creating is I'm never going to be able to trade in this league again. So that should be your mindset. It should never be
I
about
mean, you
winning.
want
It
to
should be
screw your friends over?
not to the point where
It's fantasy football after all.
but do you ever want to make a trade again? So trades are fun, and trades should never be like, oh, that person significantly won and that person significantly lost, because eventually that person's not going to trade with you. So just keep that in mind. Trades are fun, and it should feel fair on both sides, even if somebody loses at the end of the day, because that does happen. That shouldn't feel that way in the moment. So if all of your friends are telling them, hey, your friend screwed this guy over, that's not fun, and that guy's not going to trade with you again. So just keep that in mind. Second, to point out your trade, Brock Bowers for Derrick Henry. There's a chance Brock Bowers ends as the tight end 2 on the season or tight end 1. There's no chance Derrick Henry ends as the running back 2. So when you look at a positional advantage, you still walked away with the better positional advantage, because Derrick Henry is going to have his games where he goes off for 30 because he rolls into the end zone, but he's also going to have those games like week 1 and 2 where he gets 10 points. He's just going to be consistent, especially in PPR, just consistent. I'm going to get my 10, might get 12. I might have a week where I go off. I think that's okay. If you feel comfortable in making that trade, it's okay to walk away the way you did, right? Positional advantage, I still think you did great there. But third, and what is so much fun about making those trades is you can always look back and be like, "Oh, I made a mistake." But there are going to be those times where you feel good and like, got rid of Mark Andrews. I got Dalton Kincaid. Thank goodness Dalton Kincaid performed. But you have to kind of look at it as a long haul. We look at this game week to week, but there are times where you might say, like, if I'm in the manager's shoes who traded for Mark Andrews, he wanted Mark Andrews because he had Lamar Jackson. He's trying to make sure that he can double up his points on those weeks where they go off together. So, hey, that was a bad week, but there's a chance he comes back and has another big week. And like you said, you have Brock Bowers and Jake Ferguson. We have a player in our league who just dropped David Njoku and is probably going to have to stream somebody, whoever that may be. And those are the players you go, I have two great tight ends. Which one do you want? And if you believe in Brock Bowers and you traded Derrick Henry for him, I try to see what I can get for Jake Ferguson. Can I get another starting piece on my lineup? Because he's desperate. So I understand all points of the trade and, have fun with it, but don't freak out after one player had a good week. Freak out at the end of
Hard
the
not to
season when
freak
you.
out. Very emotional.
Well, you should be emotional because
Live
the
for
whole
my
point of playing
football.
fantasy is. Yeah. Listen, my fantasy
Great.
football team determines my mood for the next
Does.
6 months or so. So
The way I used to feel about watching Denver Bronco games. Don't feel that way anymore. It's about my fantasy football team. Wild. It's an addiction.
yeah, it's an addiction that we do with 9 to 11 other grown men, and then we all complain that our fantasy team stinks, and nobody ever wants to talk about their specific team.
Absolutely love it. So since we're talking so much about Jake Ferguson and Brock Bowers there, I want to talk about no more tight ends. And Michael Fabiano this week, it was one of the prominent voices in the fantasy community. He had a reel that our buddy Aaron sent to me. And he was, saying now it's time to get rid of the tight end position in fantasy. Just add 2 flexes to your roster. And I'm someone that I killed kickers in our league, so I can't immediately say that's a dumb idea. I got rid of kickers, and I tried to get him back, but people didn't want to get him on board. So I'm sorry, even though special teams is 1/3 of the game. But the tight end position, I don't feel the way I did about it. Kickers, where I was just like, it's just not fun. It's a kicker. Why do we need that? I like that it's hard at times to find a tight end. I like that there's a guessing game. As much as you try to figure out targets, who's playing, there's an element of luck. It is fantasy football after all, and that's what it is. We get lucky off a real life performance. So I can understand the conversation because it's really bad this year. When you look going into this weekend, the tight end number 1 is Dallas Goedert. And that's just because he had 28 points last weekend at New Orleans. The tight end 2 is still Brock Bowers. He had 11, 18, and then 7. So those are your top 2 tight ends. The drafted top 2 tight ends. Well, you got Travis Kelce, who has 15 total points on the season with 8 receptions. And man, it's crazy in Kelce world. He's out of shape. It's because he's hanging out with Taylor Swift all the time. Doesn't care about football. And then you got Sam Laporta, who has 17.4 total points on the year. You figure the talent is going to rise to the top. But I want to start with eliminating the tight end position. You hear that and you think what?
That's dumb. I actually agreed with you. So yeah, we got rid of kickers. So I'm gonna misrepresent the stat a little bit just because I don't remember the whole stat and I can't find it, which is what I've been looking for. But it was something along the lines of the number 1 tight end the first 3 weeks of the season has never performed well. It's week 4 and on is when we usually start to see tight ends come on. So you got to keep that in mind. It seems like it's a trend that has continued over the last 5 years. So there is that going on. But getting rid of tight ends, I agree with you. It's a positional advantage. If we take this season out and let's look at 3 years ago. Okay. 3 years ago, it was Mark Andrews and it was Travis Kelce. Those are tight end 1, tight end 2. if you drafted Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews in the first 3 rounds, you had a positional advantage that nobody else in the league had. But I also had to use a top 3 pick on a positional advantage. So in my mind, hey, I'm getting a positional advantage. I'm also having to draft that way, right? If I want a top 3 tight ends, I'm going to be missing out on a top 30 receiver or a top 24 running back. That's fine, but that's why you draft it that way. So, yes, this season has been unfortunate. I mean, because those guys aren't performing, which, I mean, if you're the Christian McCaffrey owner, you feel the same way, right? Like, oh, he's not performing. I drafted him number 1 overall. It sucks, but it happens at every position. Tight ends just you're only starting 10 to 12. So if you can get a positional advantage there, you're going to do it that way. I think getting rid of it doesn't make as much sense as getting rid of a kicker. Kickers are super inconsistent, and it's hard to tell when they're going to have good games or not because sometimes the Giants kicker kicks 5 field goals in a game and their offense looks terrible. And then, oh, this team scored 5 touchdowns, so my kicker got 5 points, but their offense performed well. It's kind of comparing apples to oranges. Like, hey, one is on a good offense, but they don't kick a lot of field goals, and the other one's on a terrible offense, but they kick a ton of field goals. Or I have Dallas' kicker who kicks a 60-yard field goal every week. So that's how I feel. Like if I want a good tight end, I got to draft it that way, and I'm giving up on a different position.
Well, even if you drafted it, like that's part of sport.
Yeah.
And fantasy is taking chances of players not performing up to their draft stock, just like in real life. First rounders can disappoint. It changes the pressure that they're under. And I am with you. I like the fact that it is challenging, and you either take that risk or you wait. And so there's an element of preparation, getting ready for your draft, of as you just laid out, attacking one early, waiting on the position, streaming the position. I like that there's that variance there to it. It's easy to add flex positions. It's easy, to even flex everyone if you wanted to. There's so many different ways to play fantasy football. And again, going back to trades are fun, fantasy is fun, but I still like that element of the specific positions. And having start X amount of running backs, wide receivers, a tight end, and then that flex position, or even just add flex if you wanted to in your league. But I still like chasing that one tight end.
Yeah, I played in a league a couple years back. They got rid of the tight end. They made it a wide receiver tight end flex. Well, why would I ever draft a Travis Kelce there if I can just start another wide receiver? So, tight ends just kind of got pushed down. And that's why there's all these leagues that do tight end premiums, right? Like tight ends get 1.5 points per reception because they're trying to make the tight end more valuable. I get it. Like there's other ways to make the tight end valuable in your fantasy league. And if you're thinking about it that way, it is fantasy. It doesn't have to, we don't all have to be the same. Make the league the way you want it. Make it fun. It's supposed to be.
But it's fun, but I do like the challenge, and I think the tight end is a challenge. So I'm not ready to jump on board of eliminating tight end position just because it's crazy right now. Just because no one drafted Dallas Goedert as tight end 1. Dallas Goedert probably went undrafted in a lot of 10-team leagues and eventually got picked up. But now that's what we're playing in the game. I look at our Travis Kelce owner in our league. Guess what? He's playing Dallas Goedert over Travis Kelce this weekend. So
I saw that.
These are the challenges now that we're in. So keep them around for now. Do not kill tight ends just yet. I want to bring up weekly quarterback locks. And we thought this year, man, you can wait on quarterback. The depth is there. You're going to feast in the late rounds. Well, not so fast, my friends. If you waited on Jaden Daniels, he is producing. He has been fantastic with the legs, but efficient football through the air, especially last week with finally getting Terry McLaurin involved. Only 2 incomplete passes on Monday Night Football, beating the Bengals in Cincinnati. But I'm gonna throw it out to you because right now I think there's only 8 players that are locks. So we're talking about 2 to 4, potentially 6 teams, depending on the size of your league, that you're in streaming quarterback territory. You're in uncharted waters right now. We thought it was going to be easy, 10-team leagues, 10 quarterbacks, boom. But I think there's only 8 guys that are locks right now. Of course, it's Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, Jaden Daniels, and you're starting Patrick Mahomes, even though he hasn't been giving you the fantasy results.
Yeah.
Like, no one is benching Patrick Mahomes, so I put him in there. And then there's 2 that I'm still all in on. I think it's Joe Burrow and C.J. Stroud. And so you're counting. You're like, all right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yeah, 8. There's 8 guys that are locked into your lineup weekly, and then
Yeah.
you're playing the streaming game, hoping someone's on the wire.
I mean, if we kind of stick with our point though, where we said to wait on quarterbacks in a 10-team league, especially. Okay, well, you didn't. Maybe you're the last guy to take a quarterback. Maybe you got Jaden Daniels. Maybe you didn't. The rest of your team should be pretty solid. And as long as you can stream a Baker Mayfield, or I mean, he had a bad week last week, but up until last week, he was killing it.
I mean the QB 1 and 2 that I took a big old L on because we bought in or say, all right, these guys, they're winning games in the NFL. They're QB1, QB2, and Derek Carr goes out there and gives you 9 fantasy points, and then Baker Mayfield against Denver Broncos at home gives you 8. Those guys.
Yeah. Sam Darnold.
He's moving up. He is.
Yeah.
Like in that lock category right now with the way they're playing. But I'm saying like 8 guys that you're not touching is kind of what I'm
right. And yeah, I mean, I'm even willing to make the argument that it's 5. I think you could argue that Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, and CJ Stroud aren't lineup locks. Like, I mean, we talked about it last week. Patrick Mahomes is not performing at a level that is number 1 or 2 quarterback. He's
people
not done
taking
it.
him, top 4 to 5 rounds in drafts. He's 15, 12, 16 points so far this season.
Yeah, like you don't want to sit him because he's clearly the best quarterback in the league, but Tom Brady was the best quarterback in the NFL for years and was never a fantasy starter. Like the difference between real football and fantasy football is exactly what this is, like exactly what we're talking about. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league. Patrick Mahomes is winning games, but not on my fantasy team. Right? Like that first year where he scored 55 touchdowns, yeah, he was great. But that Chiefs offense isn't about that anymore. They're not. It's about controlling the clock and letting the defense win the game. Like they've moved to a Patriot method of I'm going to win this way. Joe Burrow, he had a great week last week. I don't know if you can count it as consistent. And CJ Stroud, I still believe could be amazing, but it's sure hard to keep him in my lineup if he's going to keep performing 15 to 17 points. Like,
You
hey,
got Patrick Mahomes, and I just want to. So Patrick Mahomes has one top 10 scoring fantasy week over the last 12 regular season games.
yeah, like that's insane. The last 12 regular season games, which would, if you made the championship game, would be in the championship of last year. Patrick Mahomes, you're quarterback in a 4-point passing touchdown league. If you draft your quarterback in the top 3 rounds, you're hoping your expectation is 20 points a game.
Yeah, and that's why we still legs matter, especially in 4-point passing touchdown leagues. That's why Jaden Daniels is doing so well, because those guys didn't throw a touchdown pass until last weekend. Any of the rookie quarterbacks,
right?
It was week 3 where they threw a touchdown pass. And what's interesting though is now you see the question at the bottom of the screen is, can you survive? So I am someone that kind of went back and forth streaming quarterbacks. I played Jared Goff week 1, Derek Carr week 2 or week 3, Dak Prescott this week, and so I'm all over the place, and I've had really inconsistent results with that, and it doesn't feel good, but it's the place you're in. So I wanted to ask you, can you survive streaming quarterbacks? You can, but there's a bigger element of luck. What's available on the waiver wire. I have noticed a lot more people are rostering 2 quarterbacks this season. I think it's coming off of last year where we saw 66 quarterbacks start in the NFL and had major injuries. So, Tua, unfortunately, the concussion, we haven't had big setbacks at the quarterback position, but still, it shrinks that window. And then you have to make tough choices. And you have to guess right on, is it going to be an Aaron Rodgers week like it was against the Patriots? Trevor Lawrence and the Jags have been super disappointing, but streaming quarterbacks, you just have to take chances. And so what are the things you're looking for if you're streaming quarterbacks? Is it
So if
defenses, etc.? Like, how are you playing that game if you have to?
Well, I have, when I stream quarterbacks, I have two things I always look for: the offense the quarterback's on, and the defense they're playing. Now, the reason both of those are important is the offense they're on, is it quarterback friendly, right? Do they have two good targets? And is the defense they're playing also not very good, right? That's the whole point of streaming, is to pick your matchups. So I'm not, Jared Goff is a great example of a streaming quarterback I want to stream in lots of weeks. Now, he might not have great games all the time, but when he's playing a bad defense, that's the guy I want in, because he's got multiple targets, they look good, and he has the potential to get me 20 points. That's all I'm looking for when I'm streaming a quarterback. I'm not trying to get to the 40-point games. Those are great if they happen, but that's not what the rest of your team needs to carry your quarterback. Your quarterback's not going to carry your team. So as the owner of Josh Allen is going to carry my team. That's not what I'm trying to do with the streaming quarterback. My quarterback, if I'm streaming it, is going to not sink my team. So you're kind of the perfect example. You started Dak Prescott. He probably got 15, 16 points this week.
16 points out of him last night.
And the rest of your team is amazing. You're starting Malik Neighbors. He got you 23, right? So, and you have two other amazing quarterback or wide receivers that you're going to start, and probably you're going to flex one. Your quarterback didn't sink your team. He didn't get you 9. That's all I'm looking for when I'm streaming a quarterback. It's the same thing I'm looking for when I'm streaming a tight end. Yeah, it'd be great if my tight end got me 40, but if my tight end gets me 10, perfect. You're just trying to hit a threshold when you're streaming. Don't try to be, I'm going to get a home run. It's sometimes you're just looking for that single. Like if you're the Saquon Barkley owner and you are in JJ's position where you got a streaming quarterback, hey, let Saquon Barkley carry your team. Just make sure you pick the good quarterback who's going to have a good week, not maybe the homer.
Yeah, and
it's what we talked about week 2, right? When you were like, who do I start here?
Mm-hmm.
It's, hey, the team you're playing did not have a good week. Just hit a single. Don't worry about just get on base.
Just get on base when you're talking about the streaming the quarterback position. Might be uneasy, but with that being said, what's the cutoff? Like, would you be willing to trade for Joe Burrow? Would you be willing to? Because I look at the top 10 quarterbacks and kind of consensus rankings going into this weekend. Joe Burrow's number 5 a lot of places. Then you had Dak, C.J. Stroud, Brock Purdy, Mahomes down at 10. That's the life we're living. Would you like to trade for one of those guys? Or are you comfortable just trying to piece together the quarterback position?
I mean, if you can snag one of them away, right? Maybe the Jaden Daniels owner also has another decent quarterback, or the quarterbacks that they have 2 and they're having to pick one each week, but you'd be happy with either of them. That's the owner I'd try to target. So, I mean, I'm not going to target the Joe Burrow owner if he has no other quarterback, because he's going to tell me no, or he's going to ask for a ton. But most leagues only start one quarterback. So if the guy you're trying to make a trade with has 2, talk to him. Don't get robbed, right? Because a lot of times what they're trying to do is, I took 2 quarterbacks, so somebody would come to me and trade. All right, well, I'll offer you a fair trade, but I'm also not going to let you take advantage of me. You can't start both, so I'm willing to give you a piece that'll help you, or you get nothing. There's actually a few. I like to use CBS. Dave Richards creates a trade value chart every week, and he labels players at point value. So if you're having trouble figuring it out, that's a good source to start at. It's giving people a place to go to just start as a reference point. That doesn't mean it should be taken as gospel, but it's a good starting point. And it's where I like to start a lot of my trades, is okay, I think this is fair. Some other sites are saying similar or close to fair. Cool. I feel confident in sending this trade. So, you know, there's a lot of resources out there, but that Dave Richards does create a great trade value chart for people who are trying to figure out how to do it.
And it's one, playing that streamer game, things can change because at Dak Prescott goes 16 points this week, play the Steelers next week. And, that might be a match. We'll probably looking somewhere else at quarterback. And if you're playing the streaming game, I think the challenge is not if you're not rostering two quarterbacks, you're at the mercy of the waiver wire at that point in time. And so you have to make that decision. You want to constantly keep two in that rotation, or do you want to have that extra bench spot for a player?
Well, what I would say is on Sunday, before rosters lock, drop the player you know you're not going to start and pick up the quarterback for the next week that you're going to stream. Be proactive, not reactive. So, hey, like you just said, I know I'm not going to start Dak Prescott next week. Okay. Who's the player on your team you're going to drop for X, Y, or Z, and who's available on waivers? Pick them up before lineups lock so that next week you don't have to worry about, did I get him off of waivers?
That's a good one there. So always try to keep that flexibility. And that's what's tough. If you acquire players that you like and you're like, oh, I like my bench, I don't want to mess with it. But that's what you probably have to do if you're streaming quarterbacks right now is be flexible. And that's a really good point is right before lineup locks. If you like the guy for the following week, get him on your roster. And so you don't have to keep your fingers crossed when waivers go through when in the middle of the night and you wake up Wednesday morning, checking your phone, see what happened.
The unhealthy obsession of wake up. Did I get the players I want? Oh,
it's usually right when I get to work and I'm going up the elevator in the morning. So it's about 30 minutes after I woke up that I bust out my phone and I'm like, I check my waivers. I'm like, what went through?
Peak COVID, like when we were 2020, I was checking my phone at 3:00 in the morning after waivers ran. So I'd set an alarm, wake up, and start picking up players that didn't get picked up, and then I'd go back to bed. So let's not. Don't be that crazy. Don't be that guy. Get your sleep. But I've been there, is what I'm saying.
We've all been there. We've all been there at some point in time, and we're that desperate, or especially if it's one of those weeks where you're like, I do not want to lose to this person at all. It cannot happen. And what we're going to do now, though, is give you a player. Whether it's daily fantasy, maybe you're playing underdog fantasy, use a promo code JJBuck when you sign up to get your deposit bonus and your free pick'em entry. Underdog fantasy can win up to 1,000 times your money. Promo code JJBuck. Check them out. Have a lot of fun putting my pick'em entries together on Underdog Fantasy. Playing daily fantasy or someone that might be sitting on your bench, it's time to plant your flag. However, before we do that, we do have to talk about last week's results and plant your flag. And I do want to talk. You made the right choice, Steve, but you planted your flag. You went with Gabe Davis, your bench game, and then you dropped him.
I did.
So you made the right move in the fantasy world because you picked up Cam Akers, started him in your flex. He scored a touchdown, he got you 10 points. But man.
And I won by 1 point.
Gabe Davis let you down. You planted your flag, and he burned it. 2 catches for 18 yards in that Jacksonville embarrassment to Buffalo.
So two things. He disappointed me, which is why I said he was a boom bust. I really thought he was going to boom. He did bust. From our fantasy perspective, the reason I dropped him was because my opponent had a bad Thursday night game. And we had talked about that, right? If your opponent has a bad Thursday night game, I said, okay, I don't need a boom. I need a single. And that's what I did with Cam Akers. I picked him up, put him on my team. He got me 10 points. I got lucky. He fell into the end zone 100%. But I won by 1 point. And if I would have started Gabe Davis, I would have lost that game. So that's kind of why I made that change is I said, I was hoping I could get more than 10, but I was hoping for 10, right? Can my guy get me 10 points?
and you made the right move in fantasy. And this is, what Plant Your Flag is about. It's a guy that's maybe sitting on your bench. If you're looking, putting those daily fantasy plays together, you're putting your pick'ems together, the guy that can help give you that bonus, give you that edge in, gigantic field tournament. So I like you going with Gabe Davis. He just happened to bust. Same thing for Aaron, our third amigo, Aaron Hernandez. He was trying to ride the wave of Alec Pierce. Alec Pierce, he got 5.4 points, but it was just one catch for 44 yards, because that is going to be an extended conversation. How far Anthony Richardson and the Colts offense has fallen. It's like Jonathan Taylor is the only one he can play, and even saw the game where he was benched in the fourth quarter, but he came back, was good. But man, Colts not great right now. I got it. Amari Cooper, 7 catches, 86 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Went off on the New York Giants. He scored on the first play of the game after the Giants fumbled the opening kickoff. It was a 24-yard touchdown, and just like, yes, got it. But, Amari Cooper, he's a big-name player, but he was doing absolutely nothing. And so this is what we're looking for. We're looking for under-the-radar guys, or maybe those stars that are in a rut that now it's time to jump back on them. So with that being said, I will throw it over to you.
All right, so this week I'm planting my flag with Darnell Mooney. And the reason I'm doing this is there's going to be a lot more statistics behind this than I have a gut feeling like I did with Gabe Davis. The last 2 weeks, Darnell Mooney has averaged 25% of the target share up there in Atlanta. He is out targeting Kyle Pitts. He's only behind Drake London, and it's very, very minimally. I think at this point, if Darnell Mooney's out there on the waiver wire, he's a player you need to pick up. He's going to be consistent. He is going to be a player that is going to get you 12 to 14 points a game. That is my plant the flag.
I like it. Like it a lot. And, Mooney has been exciting as Kirk Cousins and that offense is getting a little bit better. Drake London finding his footing. Kyle Pitts, unfortunately, is still disappointing as always. But Mooney has been a guy that's stretching the field and making plays. And I like that one a lot. So I am going to plant my flag with Mike Evans. Like, oh, Mike Evans, really? You're going with him? You're going with the star player? Yes, I am going to build off what I did with Amari Cooper. You're looking at Mike Evans coming off 7.2 points and 4.7 points. This has been an offense that Baker Mayfield has been leaning on Chris Godwin. Godwin is getting a bigger target share in the offense right now than Mike Evans. But Todd Bowles said this week he wants Mike Evans involved, and the Buccaneers need a big bounce back game. They're at home again. They're 2-point underdogs to the Philadelphia Eagles, and this feels like one of those Mike Evans games. 4 for 100 and a tutty. Mike Evans going off. Put him back in your lineups. Put him in your daily lineups. I'm planting my flag with Mike Evans.
I like that one a lot too. I think that's a good call. Chris Godwin has been killing it out there. Mike Evans is due for a bounce back game. So I like it. I go with the unknown, and you go with the bounce back player. I love it.
Well, I think you got two things that I'll play both in daily fantasy this week to get that differential. And Mike Evans still has a bit of a salary, so the 2 down games could keep his roster percentage down, in big DFS fields. And then Mooney, can save you some money. So you have, 2 or 3 wide receivers right there to build your lineup.
Yep. And you got to feel pretty good, because last week you planted your flag with Amari Cooper, and the player you were playing against did not start Amari Cooper.
Aaron didn't start him. I was playing Aaron last week, and I'm like, plant your flag. Amari Cooper's going off, and he didn't play him. Saved me.
Yeah.
Or we would have neck and neck.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was, I saw it and I laughed. I was like, man, JJ planted his flag, and Aaron said, nope.
Going the other way. Sometimes you take your victories where you can. So we'll see how our players do. I'll build a daily fantasy with both those guys, and we'll talk about the results next week. Of course, have our trusty third, Aaron Hernandez, back.
We're going to have to start posting it on Twitter, one of our daily fantasy lineups. Like, hey, just right before game time, follow us on Twitter and we'll get it out there. You can copy the lineup. Hopefully we'll make you some money.
Absolutely. You can hit us up on the Instagram at 3Dudes Fantasy Football. See the underscores there. Find us, post some more clips and videos. The X is where it's at. I stay really busy, especially on Sundays with stuff, putting stats out there, retweeting a lot of stuff because the fantasy community, it's huge. There's so many good people out there, and I like to be a part of it. And also giving takes. Might have had a few hot takes too during that Monday Night Football game with Jacksonville and Buffalo. Doug Peterson, I think he might be an offensive coordinator soon because feels like Jacksonville might be calling up Bill Belichick shortly and seeing if he'd be interested in going there. So we'll see how that goes. We can follow us on the X at 3Dudes Fantasy Football. Of course, if you missed it, our handles are gone, but they were there.
They are. They were there at the beginning of the show. Mine is at SLM37, and this guy over here is at JJ Buck. Is there an underscore in yours?
Underscore JJ
Okay.
Buck. Yeah.
Yeah, underscore JJ Buck.
Apparently, there's another JJ Buck out there on social media running around.
I can't get Steven Masterson on anything, so it's fine. I don't know who is Steven Masterson on any of the Twitter stuff or X, but it's gone, so it's just become what it is. I will say, JJ, I handle a little bit of the Twitter, but JJ posts a lot of great stuff out there on our Twitter or on our X. There is some great information. We retweet all the doctor stuff. We are doing a great job at not only we are funny, JJ especially, but we do give you some good insight too. So follow us over there. Enjoy. We're just trying to get more information out and help as much as we can. That's what we're here for.
Growing the fantasy community because after all, we're here to have fun. We're here to have some fun. So for our third amigo, we'll welcome him back next week, Aaron Hernandez. That's Steven Masterson. I'm JJ Buck. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the 3Dudes Fantasy Football Show. And may the fantasy odds be in your favor this weekend.
Peace, y'all.